I never thought I would be telling this story. Life was beautiful with Sarah, my wife of 15 years. Our 2 kids, Emma, 12, and Jack, 8, made our family complete. We lived in a nice house in a peaceful neighborhood, and I had a good job as a bank manager. Sarah worked as a high school teacher. We were that couple everyone called perfect. Everything started changing 6 months ago. It was a normal Sunday morning when Sarah told me she wanted to join yoga classes. "David, I think I need to focus on my health," she said while making breakfast. I supported her idea. Why wouldn't I? She seemed excited about it. The first month was normal. She went to classes twice a week, always came back happy, and talked about her progress. But then things began to feel different. Her twice-weekly classes turned into 4 times a week. She bought expensive yoga gear, new mats, special clothes, and premium membership at Elite Yoga Studio. I noticed small changes in her behavior. She started putting a password on her phone, something she had never done before. When I asked about it, she said, "Oh, some students tried to prank me by posting on my social media." It made sense, but something felt off. Then came the late-night classes. "They've started advanced sessions in the evening," she explained. She would leave at 7 p.m. and return around 9:30 p.m., sometimes even later. One night, when she came home, I smelled a cologne that wasn't mine. My best friend Mark noticed it too. We were watching a football game at my house when Sarah rushed out for her evening class. Mark looked at me and said, "Dave, how long has Sarah been acting so different?" The credit card bill from last month shocked me. There were charges from restaurants I'd never heard of, on days when Sarah was supposed to be at yoga. When I tried to bring it up, she quickly said they were lunch meetings with other teachers. Last week, Emma asked me something that kept me awake all night. "Dad, why does Mom always dress up so nice for yoga?" Jenny's mom wears old t-shirts to her yoga class. I didn't want to think anything was wrong. Maybe I was paranoid. But yesterday, I called the yoga studio to surprise Sarah by paying for her annual membership. The receptionist seemed confused. "Sir, we don't have any evening classes on Thursdays." That's when I knew I had to find out the truth. What was really happening during those yoga classes? Where was my wife really going? The happy life I knew was starting to feel like a lie, and I needed answers. I couldn't sleep that night after talking to the yoga studio. My mind kept racing with questions. I looked at Sarah sleeping peacefully next to me, wondering if I really knew her anymore. The next morning, I started paying more attention. Sarah was humming while getting ready for school, something new. She spent extra time choosing her outfit, checked her phone every few minutes, and kept smiling at text messages. I decided to check the phone bill online. There was one number that showed up again and again. Most calls were during her yoga class times. I wrote down the number but couldn't find who it belonged to. During breakfast, Emma dropped another clue without realizing it. "Mom, can you come to my dance show next Thursday?" she asked hopefully. Sarah quickly replied, "Sorry, sweetie, I have my yoga class." Emma's face fell. "But Mom, you missed my last 2 shows too." The old Sarah would never miss Emma's performances. She used to be the mom who recorded every single event. This new Sarah was a stranger to us. I needed help, so I called Mark. We met at our usual coffee shop, away from everyone we knew. "Dave, I didn't want to say this before," Mark said, looking worried, "but I saw Sarah last week at Blue Moon Restaurant. She wasn't alone, and it wasn't a teacher's meeting." My hands started shaking. Who was she with? I couldn't see clearly from where I was, but it was a man. They looked close. That same day, I noticed something else. Sarah had started going to yoga in her car instead of taking her usual evening walk to the studio. She said it was because of the cold weather, but it was spring, and the weather was perfect. I made a decision. Next Thursday, when she would leave for her yoga class, I would follow her. I borrowed Mark's car. She wouldn't recognize it. "Be careful, Dave," Mark warned. Sometimes the truth hurts more than not knowing. That evening, Sarah left at her usual time, 7 p.m. She was wearing a new blue dress, definitely not yoga clothes. She had even put on the expensive perfume I got her for our anniversary. I waited a few minutes, then followed in Mark's car. My heart was pounding. She didn't drive toward the yoga studio. Instead, she headed to the fancy part of town. 20 minutes later, she parked outside Crystal Bay Hotel. As she walked inside, I saw her check her phone and smile, that same smile I'd been seeing lately. I parked the car, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. Should I go in? Did I really want to know what was behind those doors? Then my phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Dad, can you help me with my dance steps since Mom's not here? That message made my decision clear. I needed to know the truth, not just for me, but for our kids. I stepped out of the car and walked toward the hotel entrance. What I was about to discover would change everything. The Crystal Bay Hotel lobby was quiet. My legs felt heavy as I walked in. The place was fancy, all marble floors and crystal lights. Not somewhere you'd expect to find a yoga class. At the front desk, I showed the receptionist Sarah's picture on my phone. Has my wife come in? The young receptionist looked nervous. Sir, I can't share guest information. But then an older staff member walked by and heard me. He looked at Sarah's picture and said, "Oh yes, Mrs. Walker. She's headed to the Sky Lounge on the top floor. She's a regular there every Thursday." A regular? My stomach turned. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like forever. With each floor, my heart beat faster. The Sky Lounge was dimly lit with soft music playing. Through the glass walls, city lights sparkled. I spotted Sarah immediately. She was sitting at a corner table, but she wasn't alone. The man with her was someone I knew. My legs almost gave out when I recognized him, James Wilson, our next-door neighbor. The same James whose wife Linda was my colleague at the bank. They were holding hands across the table. Sarah was laughing at something he said, that same laugh that used to be only for me. I watched as James reached over and brushed her hair from her face. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Then I saw something that broke me. Sarah was showing James a brochure. I could see the travel agency logo. They were planning something. My phone buzzed again. A text from Jack. Dad, when are you coming home? Mom's not picking up her phone. That text snapped me back. I thought about Emma and Jack waiting at home. About Linda, James's wife, who had no idea her husband was here. I took out my phone and started recording. Sarah and James were now looking at flight tickets on his phone. I heard bits of their conversation. 2 weeks in Paris. Linda thinks it's a business trip. The kids will be at summer camp. They had it all planned out. I walked closer to their table. Neither of them noticed me, lost in their own world. I stood there for a moment, just watching. 15 years of marriage, countless memories, 2 beautiful kids, all thrown away in this fancy hotel lounge. Then Sarah looked up. Our eyes met. The color drained from her face. The wine glass in her hand slipped, crashing to the floor. James turned around, and his face went white. David? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. What? How? But I wasn't done. Because at that exact moment, I saw Linda walking into the Sky Lounge. She was carrying a gift bag. It was James's birthday. The next few seconds would change 4 families forever. The Sky Lounge went completely silent. Linda stood frozen at the entrance, the birthday gift bag slipping from her hands. The sound of its fall echoed through the room. Sarah jumped up from her chair, knocking it over. David, I can explain. Her voice was shaking. James just sat there, his face pale as a ghost. Linda walked slowly toward our group. Other people in the lounge started noticing the drama unfolding. Some took out their phones, ready to record. Explain what, Sarah? I found my voice. How you've been lying about yoga classes. How you and James planned a Paris trip while our kids waited at home. Linda's eyes filled with tears. Paris? She looked at James. The business trip you told me about, it was with her? Sarah tried to reach for my arm. I stepped back. Don't. Just don't. I pulled out my phone and played the video I'd just recorded. Their voices talking about Paris filled the quiet lounge. Then my phone rang. It was Emma. I answered on speaker. Dad? Where are you? Mom's still not home and Jack's hungry. Can you bring pizza? Everyone heard her innocent voice. Sarah covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. James finally stood up, trying to approach Linda. "Stay away from me." Linda's voice was sharp. She turned to Sarah. "We were friends. Our kids have sleepovers. How could you?" The hotel manager appeared, asking if everything was okay. Of course nothing was okay. 4 lives, 2 families, years of friendship, all broken in this fancy lounge. I looked at Sarah, remembering our wedding day. You know what hurts the most? Not the lying, not even this. It's how you missed Emma's dance shows for these meetings. How you made our kids feel less important. The kids. Sarah's face crumbled. "Please, David, we need to talk about this at home." Home. I laughed, but there was no joy in it. You mean the home next door to James and Linda? The home where our kids play with their kids. Then something unexpected happened. An old couple from another table stood up. The old man spoke, his voice firm. "Young man, we've been married 50 years. Trust, once broken, is like a shattered mirror. But sometimes..." His wife cut him off. "George, stop. Look at their faces. This isn't some movie scene for you to comment on." The old man's interruption somehow broke the tension. Reality crashed back in. We were making a scene in a public place. Our private disaster had become dinner entertainment. I took out my car keys. "I'm going to pick up pizza for our kids. When I get home, Sarah, we need to." But before I could finish, Linda did something that changed everything again. She opened the gift bag she'd dropped, took out what was inside, and Linda pulled out a yellow folder from the gift bag. Her hands were shaking. "I wasn't just bringing birthday gifts today," she said. James's face changed. "Linda, what are you?" "I hired a private detective 3 months ago," Linda announced. She opened the folder and spread photos across the table. "You weren't as clever as you thought." The photos showed more than just Sarah and James. There were pictures of James with another woman at a beach resort, and Sarah with someone else at a different hotel. My head spun. Sarah gasped. James looked like he'd seen a ghost. "That's right," Linda continued, her voice getting stronger. "You two weren't just betraying us. You were betraying each other too." Sarah grabbed the photos of James at the beach resort. "You said you were alone. You said I was the only one." Her voice cracked. James tried to defend himself. "Sarah, those photos are old." 2 weeks ago isn't old, James," Linda cut in. She turned to me. "David, I was going to tell you everything tonight." I couldn't watch this go on anymore. The hotel manager stepped in again. "Please, take this somewhere private." But there was more. Linda wasn't finished. She pulled out her phone and played a recording. James's voice filled the room. "Sarah's just a distraction. Once I get the bank information from David through her." My blood went cold. "Bank information?" I looked at Sarah. Her face told me she had no idea about this part. "You used me?" Sarah whispered to James. "All this time." I suddenly remembered all the questions Sarah had been asking about my work at the bank. Small questions that seemed innocent at the time. James had been planning something bigger than an affair. The old couple who had tried to give advice earlier were now fully invested in the drama. The old man stood up again. "Now this is better than my evening shows." His wife pulled him back down, but she was right. This had turned into something none of us expected. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Mark. "Dave, you need to check your email now. I found something about James's company. It's not what you think." I opened my email, and what I saw made the affair seem small compared to what was really going on. My hands shook as I read Mark's email. Attached were documents showing James's real business, a fake investment company. He had been stealing money from people, and now he wanted access to my bank's clients. I looked up from my phone. "James, you're not just a cheater. You're a criminal." The color left James's face. He grabbed his coat and tried to run, but 2 men in suits suddenly blocked the elevator. They showed their badges, FBI agents. "James Wilson," one agent said, "we've been tracking your investment scam for months." Linda smiled sadly. "I'm not just a betrayed wife. I've been helping the FBI gather evidence." "Those private detective photos? That was just a cover." Sarah fell into a chair, her whole world crashing. "I was part of your plan to steal from the bank?" She looked sick. "You told me you loved me." The FBI agent spoke again. Mrs. Walker, we know you weren't involved in the financial crimes. Mr. Wilson used multiple affairs to get close to bank employees across the city. Other hotel guests were openly recording now. The old couple had ordered popcorn. The hotel manager had given up trying to control the situation. My phone rang again, Emma. This time Sarah heard it too. Our daughter's name on the screen reminded us of what really mattered. David, Sarah spoke softly, I know I don't deserve it, but please, can we tell the kids together? They shouldn't hear about this from anyone else. Before I could answer, Mark rushed into the lounge. Dave, there's more. He stopped, looking at the FBI agents. Oh, you're already here. James tried one last time. Linda, please. Think about our kids. Linda's answer was ice cold. I did think about our kids. That's why I couldn't let their father steal people's life savings. The FBI agents started reading James his rights. As they led him toward the elevator, he looked back at Sarah. I really did care for you. Sarah's response surprised everyone. She stood up, walked to Linda, and hugged her. I'm so sorry. I didn't know, but that's no excuse. Then Sarah turned to me, tears in her eyes. But what she was about to say was interrupted by a loud crash from the kitchen, followed by screams. The kitchen door burst open. Out ran James's teenage son Kevin, his face covered in tears. He'd heard everything while working his part-time job as a kitchen helper at the hotel. Dad, how could you? Kevin's voice shook the room. Is this why you couldn't come to my games? Because you were busy destroying families? The FBI agent stopped. Everyone watched as Kevin approached his father. Linda tried to reach for her son, but he stepped away. Kevin, you shouldn't be here. James started. No, Dad. I should have been here. Everyone should see who you really are. Kevin pulled out his phone. And this is for all the families you hurt. He played a video. It showed James in his home office, bragging to someone about his investment scams. Kevin had recorded it 2 weeks ago, but was too scared to show anyone. I'm sorry, Mom. Kevin turned to Linda. I knew something was wrong, but didn't know what to do. The old man who'd been watching everything stood up one last time. Son, he said to Kevin, you just did the bravest thing I've seen in my 70 years. Sarah watched the scene unfold, then turned to me. David, I was so wrong. I destroyed our family for someone who never cared about families at all. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Jack. Dad, Emma and I ordered pizza ourselves. Are you and Mom fighting? The simple message hit us all hard. While we were here exposing lies and crimes, our kids were home, worried and confused. Linda spoke up, Kevin, let's go home. The FBI has your father. She looked at Sarah and me. David, Sarah. I forgive you, Sarah. Not for you, but for myself. And for our kids who still have to grow up on the same street. As the FBI led James away, he called out to Kevin, but Kevin turned his back. Sarah picked up her purse, hands trembling. David, I know I don't deserve another chance. But for Emma and Jack, I thought about our kids. About the 15 years before this mess. About Kevin's courage to expose his own father. We'll tell them together, I said finally. Not the whole story, not yet. But they deserve both parents helping them through this. The old couple finally got up to leave. The old lady stopped by us. Marriage isn't just about love, she said. It's about choices. Every day. Your story isn't over unless you choose it to be. As we left the Sky Lounge, we weren't the same people who entered it. James was headed to jail. Linda and Kevin had a new truth to live with. And Sarah and I? We had a long road ahead. The pizza was cold when we got home, but Emma and Jack were waiting. For families were changed forever. But sometimes, the end of one story is just the beginning of another. Life isn't about the mistakes we make, but about how we fix them. And as I looked at my children's faces, I knew that whatever came next, it would be about them. Always about them.